to infinity and beyond.
This is me. This is how I win.
Were you rushing or were you dragging? Answer!
You're a wizard, Harry.
Say what again? Say what again? I dare you.
No, I am your father.
Hasta la vista, baby.
Are you not entertained? Are you not entertained?
And here we go.
Hello, everyone. Welcome back inside the film room. Zach Owens here with Johnny Sobchak. Johnny, how are you, my friend?
I'm doing as well as a Minnesota Vikings fan can on this particular weekend. But yeah,
Hey,
I can't complain too much.
It's devastating for you. I know, 31-30 loss. We're recording this on Sunday night, so it's still a fresh wound. But I'm here to say that the Panthers got their first win in 329 days. It had been since November 3rd of last year, almost a full calendar year, and we got a win.
Oh man,
Tides are turning in Carolina.
You love to see it. No, I it sucks too because the one thing keeping me going so far this football season is my fantasy football team is 2-0, but this weekend I think I'm gonna lose. So that would be it's just an all around lose.
Yeah, pouring salt in the wound.
Yeah. So, oh well.
But at least we have a great episode in store today.
I think we do.
Better than your football standings, but today we are, as always, breaking down some news, the latest from this week, and there's some pretty exciting stuff. A lot of superhero stuff to talk through. And we've got our review of Netflix's latest original film, Enola Holmes. Pretty solid. We'll talk about that. And then we are bringing back the top 5 ranking, this time top 5 detective movies in honor of Enola and Sherlock Holmes, the whole mystery genre. So we're going to dive into some exciting mysteries there to close out the episode. But before we get started, What's been going on? How's the last week been in Johnny's world? How's everything?
Yeah, it's been going well. We had obviously Enola Holmes came out, so it was cool to see a new movie, from Netflix. They've been kind of the lifeline for all the movie fans this year because
exactly
put out content consistently with even with the pandemic going on. And then of course I was really excited. Last night I finally got to see my girlfriend and we watched Nomadland. Thank you to New York Film Festival for doing an awesome online, very inclusive presentation for their films this year, being very accommodating thanks with the pandemic going on. So we got to see that movie, which was, I've been excited for it all year. And then just recently in the last month or so, it's been getting a ton of hype. And I'm very happy to say that it lived up to the hype for me. So I had a good
unfortunately, sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off, but I'm just still reckoning with my great mistake. This is supposed to be a group watch that we were going to have here, a remote group watch with us and Jake and Josh, and then break it all down. And then little did I know that virtual screenings can sell out. Who would have known? We'd planned this weeks ago, and then when the time came, you guys all got your tickets in advance, and I went yesterday to go and get mine because there's not a limited number of seats in a theater. But
I guess they're just trying to maintain some level of exclusivity. Even
I was thinking either that or just like the website don't want like the server to crash or something like that. So
that makes sense too. But yeah, that's a bummer. I really thought. I mean, if I had, if I had realized that you did not know that weeks ago, I would have said it explicitly. But
I mean,
thought
that's definitely on me. That is my mistake. I was like, if I don't have to spend $25 at this exact moment, then I'll just wait and spend it later. So
yeah. No, as soon as I saw that was a because I had no idea that New York Film Festival was doing that. It was really when I saw people tweeting about it when the tickets and went online for sale that I realized that they were doing that. I thought it was really cool. So had to hop on that and did it right away and felt, confident knowing the last couple of weeks that I had my stuff reserved. And then it was just literally, it was yesterday, wasn't it? When you realized there was the day before. Yeah. So L on that.
Yeah, L's all around for me. Well, not for you guys, but definitely for me. But I did, however, get to see an excellent movie this week. And I'm not talking about Enola Holmes, although that was pretty good. I got to see The Trial of the Chicago 7.
Yeah.
Very, very exciting. I got the Netflix screener that hit theaters, very limited theaters, yesterday.
Yes.
On Friday. But it's, again, super limited where theaters are open. And then it's coming to Netflix October 16th. So very excited about that movie. Got my written review up on the site, but I guess there's not really spoilers since it's a true story, but yeah, I mean, you can go ahead and check it out, but definitely return to that once you've seen the movie, so we can discuss and see if you agree. But I really enjoyed it. Aaron Sorkin writing and directing that, incredible cast, a lot to be excited about there. I mean, we all know that Aaron Sorkin is like a wizard when it comes to writing dialogue, but the way he was able to turn courtroom dramas, which they're either hit or miss, sometimes they're thrilling, sometimes they're a drag, but
yeah,
he was just able to turn that into it felt like watching action sequences, the way everything was so thrilling and exciting, and they wove the story into the actual court case. And so it was kind of flashbacks and stuff. I don't want to give too much away, but it was very impressive. It's my film of the year so far. It beat out The Five Bloods, just barely. But I mean, those are two heavyweights on Netflix that are probably going to be in contention come April.
Yeah, Netflix is bringing again. We said they're bringing the heat with regards to pop films and kind of just pure entertainment for people that want an action movie or comedy or something. But then on the flip side, they have a ridiculous slate of awards level films that they're really campaigning hard on. And I think The Five Bloods was very early in the year for award season, but that got a lot was received very well, and as being talked about. And now of course Chicago 7, and then David Fincher's Mank is on the horizon as well. And I think Hillbilly Elegy is with Amy Adams from Ron Howard, and also Glenn Close starring that, is also a Netflix film, I believe. So yeah, and there's even more beyond that. So it's just been really, really strong from them. I have to give credit where credit is due. I've been harsh on Netflix in the past. I still have my issues with Netflix, but over the last several years now, they have been upping their game significantly. And this year was kind of the perfect storm for them to.
Yeah, because this was not, Chicago 7 was not supposed to be a Netflix movie,
exactly.
But it was. Yeah. That they've been the main beneficiaries of the pandemic and theatrical closings, that people are just kind of sending their movies to Netflix, especially Paramount, who did this, and Paramount did The Lovebirds previously. Mm-hmm. Obviously it's very different caliber of film, but still just finding that outlet to get it available to people that's not a $20 rental or a $30 premiere access. They're making these movies accessible, and Netflix has been just absolutely dominating across the board when it comes to people at home looking for something to watch.
100%.
But I was doing some digging just as we started this episode. Talking about people at home finding something to watch. Did Johnny watch The Haunting of Hill House?
I sure did. Me and my girlfriend, we kind of put together a spooky season watch list of sorts. We have different series and movies that we want to get caught up on during September and October as we lead into Halloween, and that was one of the big ones on our list. Neither of us had seen it, and we spent just the last couple of days binging it, and it was a blast in a very depressing and scary way. It's definitely I can see why it's been so popular. I can see why it's getting a second kind of series from the same producers on Netflix. And I was very, very impressed. I think Mike Flanagan, who I wasn't a fan of Dr. Sleep, and I was a little timid coming into Hill House just because it was so hyped up, and I know a lot of people love it. But yeah, I think once I settled into it, it was just a really gripping and interesting look at a haunted house story, but also approaching it from a very human way, with regards to things like grief and trauma and familial things like that. It's just it reminded me of Hereditary in some ways because of that. And so it really fit kind of what I wanted to get out of it. And I'm excited for Bly Manor, which I know is coming up on October 9th, I believe. And so, yeah, I'm very, very impressed. I would definitely recommend it. Check it out if you've been putting it off, and get excited about the new season. Yeah,
it's always been not like since it happened. It was one of my top shows of 2018. I haven't returned to rewatch it, but it's so good. Episode 6, the one take. Basically, there's like 3 one takes that make up the episode, 3 or 4, and it's just during the alternating storms. It's so good. So I'm so good. Still working my way through Bly Manor to get the reviews and recaps ready for the website come 2 weeks from now. But it's living up to the hype that Hill House. Man, so that's great to hear. I'm excited for me to finish it, for everybody else to get to check it out, and I'm excited that you're on board now. Is this going to be? So when you made this, did you pencil that into your schedule, knowing that you were going to watch Hill House and that was coming soon, or is this going to be like a last minute addition to you and Reagan's spooky season calendar?
No, it was kind of like I knew that new season was coming up, and I realized that she hadn't seen it either, and it was just like kind of fit in perfectly. And so when this was actually we don't have a set schedule, but on our list, when I got here this weekend to stay with her, we were like, hey, what do you want to hop into right now? And that was kind of the one we were like, hey, let's do it, let's get it done. So fit in well.
Definitely. I'm glad you enjoyed it. But another thing before we get into news, just another quick shout out here. We have to shout out the Queen, Zendaya, on her Emmy win, Outstanding Lead Actress in a Drama Series for Rue in Euphoria, even though Euphoria was not nominated and didn't win Best Drama.
Right.
But, we're willing to look past that because Zendaya got the win. That was so exciting. I mean, I'm not going to lie. The way that like Succession has dominated for years, I didn't expect Euphoria to win. I didn't expect Zendaya to get in there, but very, very pleased. And it seemed like the internet as a whole was just celebrating together for that. So
yeah, no, that was a really, really awesome moment. And as someone who is a huge fan of Euphoria, just watched the series for the first time in the last month or two, and then binged it again shortly thereafter with some other family members. I was very disappointed and just confused as to how it didn't get more recognition, more nominations, more wins from the TV Academy. But they definitely earned some cred from giving Zendaya this win. It was I haven't seen the other performances, so I can't speak too much to those, but I have to believe that she was deserving of the win, because she really did it all and carried that show on her back significantly, even though the rest of the cast is so good. It was just very much up to her in the end of it. So great for her, great for the show, great for
the Dune Hive.
Dune Hive. A lot of people are excited about Dune. She's a big part of why. So really, just good energy all around with that win.
Yeah, and speaking of the Emmys, this will lead straight into our first news topic today.
Hey-o.
One of the biggest things, other than the awards, was the WandaVision trailer that debuted during the show.
Yes.
Of course, this is the upcoming. It'll be the first MCU Marvel series on Disney Plus. Mm-hmm. Starring Wanda, aka Scarlet Witch, and Vision. What were your initial thoughts or takeaways from this trailer? It was very, very out there, very weird, creative. For me, I was thrilled by that. I think that's what Marvel needs to do.
Yeah, it was everything that you would want to see from this project and also from Marvel Studios at this point in their development after, post Endgame. They've done 20 plus films now. There's a very specific formula that people associate with them. So now moving into this new era, and as you said, it's wild to think that this is the first MCU show that is going to be
because that
on
wasn't
Disney
planned.
Plus. No, it wasn't. It was supposed to be Falcon and the Winter Soldier, I believe. That was supposed to be coming out this year. Now they've kind of swapped. It's going to be. I think
that has some sort of tie-in with Black Widow, so it's gonna
right.
Black Widow is gonna happen, then that, and then obviously with the move,
Right.
But now this is first, and I feel like this trailer went over like as perfectly as it could have.
Yeah.
Because if you're Marvel, I mean, Falcon and the Winter Soldier is obviously a much more general and like appealing show, I would say. I mean, obviously diehard Marvel fans are going to watch anything, but like the people, if they're an average fan, you're going to be way more into basically Captain America show than you are this one, which is a little more niche. So I mean, but to see people get this excited about it and have it be like this weird and out there, but still like draw people in, I mean, I think that's like a huge win for them.
Yeah, and that's the funny thing for me is I'm sure I'll end up watching it. I don't personally have a Disney Plus account. I have a family member who I can go on and watch stuff on there. But for me, I have very little interest in the Falcon and the Winter Soldier show compared to this one. I have little interest in all the shows compared to this one, actually. I just think that these two characters together, I think, offer a lot of exciting possibilities, visually, from a storytelling standpoint, just from where they have been left at the end of Endgame and Infinity War. And so that added element of kind of not knowing what to expect, but based on this footage, it's going to be trippy. It's going to be, I think it could be a really kind of deep and more like emotional project out of the MCU too, especially when you look at it from the perspective that what I think the show is going to be is kind of Scarlet Witch, processing, the loss of Vision, her, partner, her lover, like that's a huge thing. And for her who can alter reality, is incredibly powerful and is also, as we know, going to be featured in Doctor Strange 2, the sequel, which is, shaping up to be a pretty big, I think, kind of almost like event film on par with something like Thor Ragnarok or Captain America Civil War. I think this is just really, really exciting. And this trailer is pretty much delivered on everything that I wanted to see and what I hope that this show can be. So I don't need to see anything else. I could just get the show, next week and I would, watch the entire thing right away, probably. Right.
And we've also, I've heard some theories that, like you said, obviously Vision died in Infinity War. And so it's like, how is this actually happening? Like, what is this? Right. And so you alluded to the manipulating reality. I've heard that like some people think that obviously WandaVision is their two names put together, but like people are saying, is this going to be like Wanda's vision of like what she wants it to be like? And I mean, there's a lot of other tie-ins here as well. Monica Rambeau, who was the played by Tiana Paris, she was Maria Rambeau's daughter that we saw back in Captain Marvel. So she is grown up. She's grown up in this show, and she's going to be featured in that in some capacity. And then also Kat Dennings' character from Thor, I guess the second Thor, The Dark World, she is also going to be featured here in some capacity, but I don't really know how that tie-in works. They're just kind of pulling people from all over the MCU to put in here. But yeah, I mean, I think that if we know anything about the MCU, it's about the interconnectivity of it all. So I'm not surprised to see that. And like you said, leading into Doctor Strange and the Multiverse of Madness, this is going to play a big part in kind of these alternate dimensions and alternate realities, I think. Yeah, no, I am so excited for that, that film, the Doctor Strange sequel. And
if this show was completely standing on its own and Scarlet Witch wasn't even going to be in that movie, I would be really excited for the show. But knowing that this is going to essentially lead into that and have some sort of strong connection, that is also really enticing to kind of get a glimpse at what that might be.
Yeah, I totally agree. And speaking of Marvel series, like we said, we know that I believe there's 8 that are in
Good
some
Lord.
stage of development to come out on Disney Plus over the next few years. There's this one, there's Falcon and the Winter Soldier, there's a Hawkeye show, there's Miss Marvel, there's She-Hulk. I'm not even sure. I know I'm missing a couple, but we just got news or rumors that Samuel L. Jackson is joining for a Nick Fury Marvel series on Disney Plus. Do you have any? We don't have to go too deep into this because there's not really any info about this. But do you have a sort of instant reaction to that news? Do you think it's a good idea, bad idea? Don't care at all?
I don't really care at all too much. I mean, love Sam Jackson, love Nick Fury. I think that he plays that role really well, and he's always been funny, showing up in the different MCU films. But I don't know. I assume there's going to be a lot more to this than we know at this juncture, so it's kind of not even worth speculating about. But I could see getting more excited about this as we learn more. But at face value, I just not really sure how much people are going to be necessarily into this one. I think you said,
the Sam Jackson appeal on its own is enough to get.
I think it's going to be more generally appealing, like you said. When you're talking about Winter Soldier and Falcon, because it's just people know this character, like they love seeing Sam Jackson as Nick Fury. I don't think it really matters what you do with him. I think people are going to watch. So from that perspective, it's kind of irrelevant what they do at the same time. The one thing I would say is going to be interesting because at the end of Spider-Man Far From Home, we saw that he had been replaced, at least in that individual film,
right,
with a what's the race?
Skrull.
A Skrull. A Skrull alien had been basically, been pretending to be Nick Fury while hanging out with Peter Parker and dealing with all these different things that were happening in the world. And then we saw in the after credit scene that the real Nick Fury had basically been off-world on some big Skrull spaceship out in the middle of the universe somewhere. Mm-hmm. So is this going to tie into that at all? Is it going to explain any of that?
That's one of the things I'm curious about. Like,
it could be completely independent. It could be set even before Iron Man. It could be all, a prequel basically. Or
right. When is this going to be? That's the question.
That's the key question. So
I know you haven't seen Captain Marvel, but we've seen that they're capable of de-aging Samuel L. Jackson as Nick Fury. I mean, he looked great as the younger version of himself. So this could be, they could do flashbacks within the show that's set in the modern time and have him doing both. But I mean,
yeah,
it's really, I was going to raise that if you didn't, about the replacement at the end of Far From Home. So we don't really know what he's been up to, or this could maybe look into how he got to where he is. But obviously, if this is just now being rumored or being announced and it's the 8th in line, I don't think there's going to be. I think there will be plenty of other Nick Fury appearances between now and then to sort of fill in the gaps of what we might be getting there.
Yeah, I reckon so.
Another superhero TV show that is coming soon. We got big news. This one might be more up your alley with your just knowing of your James Gunn love and your DC love, but John Cena and James Gunn are bringing a Peacemaker series to HBO Max. This is the character that John Cena will be portraying in next year's Suicide Squad. So obviously he must do something well in that, enough to warrant a TV show.
Yeah. James Gunn himself said on Twitter after this announcement came out that they basically approached him. They're like, hey, wanted to do an HBO Max show about anyone from your movie. And the first thing he said was, I want to do a Peacemaker series with John Cena. And I think that says a lot. I think that, everyone loves John Cena. I think you'd be hard pressed to find someone who is not a fan in some form or fashion, whether you were a pro wrestling fan growing up as a kid when he was really popular in the mid 2000s, or he's been getting more into Hollywood films, and he was in
He's also just kind of like cult meme status.
Yeah, he's a huge meme. He's just, it's amazing his staying power, I think, almost coming up on 20 years since he, made his wrestling debut, and he's still, out there starring in huge films. People love, his charity work and all that stuff. He's just a big icon, and I think that makes sense. Is probably part of the reason why James Gunn, has chosen Peacemaker to do this, why he chose to cast him as Peacemaker in the first place. And Peacemaker, for those of you who don't know, he's kind of this absurd. I mean, all the characters from the Suicide Squad look absurd, but his kind of MO is that he is trying to, make peace possible through just absurd, violence, basically. And it's kind of I think the humor that James Gunn is going for, especially on like making it rated R, as Joel Kinnaman said, last week. And at this point, it's basically confirmed that the Suicide Squad is going to be rated R. I think that it was written that way, it was shot that way. I think that's what's going to end up happening. So I expect this show also to be, TVMA or radar, whatever they're going to use. I don't know what they use on HBO Max, or if they have their own thing or not, but I expect a lot of violence. I expect a lot of comedy. And I think
I believe James Gunn referred to him as the world's biggest douchebag.
Exactly.
The character. So, I mean, definitely, I feel like there would definitely be like crude humor and everything in there on top of the violence and the action. But this is, I think, so I don't know anything about Peacemaker other than what we've seen from the Suicide Squad behind the scenes and all that stuff. But like you said, he is a master of weapons and a man who, quote, believes in peace at any cost, no matter how many people he has to kill to get it. So that's pretty, I mean, that just seems like something that John Cena would be great at playing. Yeah, for sure. And the other key thing to mention is that some people are like, oh, so I guess he survives the movie, right? Or, okay, is it going to be a prequel? Is it going to be set after the movie? What's it going to be? And really the only thing that they alluded to is that it's going to explore his origins. And that really... But they said it's not necessarily an origin story. Right. I mean, that completely leaves it open to interpretation as to when it's going to be set. It could be... And again, this show is going to be out after the movie. So everyone's going to be able to go see the movie, hopefully, next year. When it comes out. It's right now, it's slated for August, I believe. Go out, see the movie, love Peacemaker, think he's hilarious or badass or whatever, and then this show will come out either later in 2021 or even the year after that, and then that will hopefully be something people are excited about, and we'll maybe even get more episodes or more seasons out of it after that. Yeah, I mean, it seems to me that HBO Max just like is... HBO in general is just crushing it. I mean, they've got all the DC stuff lined up, that connection through Warner. Obviously Snyder Cut is a big thing that's coming there, but they're kind of finally getting in their bag to catch up to the Marvel level of content production. Yeah, I think HBO Max, I mean, I've been enjoying the hell out of it since I've gotten it. I've just been catching up on so many shows and movies that I've been putting off. But it's definitely a weakness of theirs that they didn't launch with one huge marquee show or one huge like original film or anything like that. But now they're firing on all cylinders in the production side of things. So the next year, 2-3 years is going to be huge for original series and original movies. And they have a bunch of big names, a bunch of known properties. So it's definitely exciting. To see what else they might cook up alongside this stuff. And I know you mentioned the timeline for this, that it would be after Suicide Squad hits theaters, but just to clarify, production for this would begin in early 2021, which would be before James Gunn is set to begin production on Guardians 3. So there was people were getting kind of upset saying that, wait, so does this mean you're going to delay Guardians 3? But no, this will be taking place in the predetermined break that he was already going to have. So this won't affect any sort of delay on the next Guardians movie. Yeah, and that's another thing, too, that we should mention is not only is he writing all of these episodes himself, but he's going to be directing multiple episodes, including the first episode.
So he's definitely having a huge hand in this, and I think that's a good sign and a testament to just how passionate, Gunn is about this project, this character, and kind of being a mainstay in the DC universe for at least the foreseeable future.
I saw him tweet something along the lines of like, this is what happens when you're stuck at home during a pandemic. That he just like, instead of sitting around like not doing anything, he just decided to write this show. So
that's bad.
At least some good things have come out of this.
Hell yeah.
A little more DC news. We're just crushing it with the superhero news, but this is another one that's got you excited. I know. I mean, I'm pretty excited about it too. But Aldis Hodge has been cast as Hawkman in Black Adam. So again, as the DC, you're filling in perfectly for Jake. But as the DC experience, the guy with DC experience, what are your thoughts here? Are you familiar with Hawkman in general?
So I'm not super familiar with Hawkman. I'm more familiar with Hawkwoman, especially she had a big role in the Justice League Unlimited cartoon that I watched when I was younger. But he's kind of a hothead. He's more of it says that I think Dwayne Johnson talked about how he's going to be kind of the leader of the Justice Society, which is going to be a big part of the Black Adam movie. That also includes Atom Smasher, which is Noah. I can't remember Centineo's character. And then I think there's going to be at least one or two other, including Dr. Fate, which I know is a big fan favorite. But these are more ancient kind of based heroes.
Which is what Shazam is,
Exactly,
so that matches up well since this is the anti-Shazam, basically.
Yeah, and he, in the comics, a lot of times he's portrayed his secret identity as Carter Hall. He works as like an archaeologist. He works in a museum. And he basically is a reincarnation of an ancient Egyptian prince. And as a superhero, he has a flight harness. He has wings that he can take on and off. He has a mace, and all this is made out of nth metal, which is it's kind of like adamantium or vibranium in the Marvel universe. It's very strong, very multi-fat. You can use it for a bunch of different things. But the main thing for this is I think it's great casting. I think it's really good. Aldis Hodge is really he's been in some big movies. He was in Hidden Figures. He was in The Invisible Man earlier this year.
That's really the only thing I know him from, I think, because I haven't seen Hidden Figures.
Right.
I haven't seen Straight Outta Compton. Mm-hmm. Brian Banks he was in last year, but I didn't see that. But One Night in Miami is coming up soon. That's something that he's supposed to be pretty incredible in as Jim Brown.
Yeah.
So I mean, I just know him from Invisible Man, but he was very good in that to still have a good enough performance to make me excited about this casting with limited knowledge.
Yeah, he's a rising star, and I think it's really cool to see someone in that position get a role as big as this in a movie as big as this. So it's really good for his career, and I think he fits the role well. I think I could see him playing someone who, he's huge for one thing. He's physically imposing, and I think that was a big thing that they needed to have for Hawkman because I don't know if The Rock has stated it himself or if it's just been heavily implied, but him and Black Adam are probably going to go toe to toe and fight at some point during the movie. So I think that's good to have someone that's, big, tall, strong that you can see standing next to The Rock as Black Adam and be like, okay, yeah, I could see them having a big badass, brawl.
Yeah. I'm excited for that. I don't think, I don't know what to expect because I'm not super familiar with all of this, but again, it was pretty high on Shazam. Love The Rock. Mm-hmm. Speaking of The Rock, did you see his post the other day about his power going out at his house and that his electric gate would not open to let his car go through, so he just ripped it off the hinges?
Yeah, it took me like a moment because I saw it and I was reading it, and it took me like a moment to understand exactly what he was saying happened because at first I was like, okay, so he drove through his gate to get out.
No,
and then I read it again and again, and I'm like, okay, he literally just ripped it with his bare hands off the brick and mortar and threw it down and then drove off. So, that was
to get to the set for Black Adam. So
Yeah, I mean the guy's a freak of nature. We all know that, and every pic he posts recently, and all the promo he's been in for this movie and others, it's like, I mean, can the guy's traps get any bigger? I mean, this guy
It's like if he didn't need an excuse to get any more jacked, but now
and
he's
this is the
playing a
most jacked I
superhero.
think he's ever been. I mean, it's insane, and I think it's great because I mean, you know, a lot of people always complain, oh, they pad the suits, the superhero costumes. I mean, of course they're gonna pad them, but these guys do get jacked and they do put on weight and they get fit. But I mean, you could put on paper thin costume on The Rock and he would look like, you know, the toughest superhero, the most badass superhero you've ever seen. So I think it's great. Looks great. I'm excited. I'm getting more excited about this project. I'm still, you know, I'm not expecting, you know, The Dark Knight or anything like that. But as far as the overall,
I feel like it'd be
quality,
on par, like tonally with Shazam, since that's kind of
I think
the match.
if they ride that line, it'll be a really fun, cool, like enjoyable, you know, movie. So
Agreed.
fingers crossed.
Well, hopefully we will get to see that on time because there were a lot of delays this past week. We don't have to get super deep into this, but just worth noting that Disney, Fox, not Fox, but Disney and the Fox properties, they have delayed a bunch of stuff, finally pulled the plug on their hopes of getting Black Widow in theaters in November. So Black Widow has moved from November 2020 to May 7th, 2021. And as things tend to do in the MCU, that has caused the domino effect. So now that was the date that Shang-Chi and the Legend of the Ten Rings was supposed to come out. So that goes to July 9th, 2021. And The Eternals has been delayed from February 12th, 2021 to November 5th, 2021. So some all around shuffling there. So now that means that we will be seeing Shang-Chi ahead of Eternals.
Yes.
So I don't know that really means anything in the continuity. I doubt it does of what's going to be happening in the universe. And then on top of that, West Side Story, which was supposed to be an awards contender this year, moved basically a full year from December 18th of this year to December 10th next year.
It was kind of like inevitable. I think a lot of us, you know, we hoped that this wasn't gonna be the case, but we saw it coming. And yeah, it sucks. It's sad. It's the reality. It's so just bizarre because I remember when the pandemic really was kicking off in the United States in like February and March. You know, you hoped, you know, none of us have lived through a pandemic. So it was kind of like hoping, okay, maybe by the middle of summer it'll be okay, or like maybe the end of summer or in the fall or like early winter it'll be okay. But now it's just like, okay, it's almost October and the end is nowhere in sight. And we've had a little bit of success here and there as far as theatrical, especially overseas, where they've been doing, you know, better than the United States has been with theaters and containing the pandemic. But it looks like this year is very, very close to almost completely shot at this point.
I will say there were some hidden bright notes in this announcement that Soul,
that's true.
for now, inevitable to change probably, but Soul is still sitting in that November theatrical release date. That's one that they could likely move to Disney Plus if need be.
Yeah.
And then also Free Guy, the Ryan Reynolds.
Free Guy.
That film will be still set for December in theaters. Right. So
that's wild.
I don't think anybody's gonna.
And Death on the Nile, right?
Yeah, Death on the Nile went from.
Where'd they move?
I want to say it moved from October to December, maybe.
Yeah, it took West Side Story's old December 18th date.
But I mean, I don't think I hate to break it, but I don't think anybody's going to be risking their life to go see Free Guy in theaters. At least I will not. But
I don't know I don't think I would have been seeing that in the theater if it came out in July and there was no pandemic at all. So
that's true. They also one more thing is that The King's Man moved from February 26, 2021. It moved up 2 weeks to February 12th, 2021. That was to kind of provide some spacing, or it was to replace Eternals date that they moved from. So we'll see if hopefully things are stable by February of next year.
Man. Yeah.
That would just be the darkest timeline if that was not true.
Yeah. It's gonna be a turbulent neck. I mean, if it hasn't been turbulent already, it's gonna continue to be that way. And, you know, it's all out of our control. It sucks as fans, and it sucks as people who just love, you know, having new movies to go see or being at the theater and, you know, hanging out with your friends and family and being able to like have that experience. But just got to roll the punches. Hopefully, you know, everyone just stays safe, stays healthy. And when it's time and it's possible, we'll all be able to go back to the movies, watch some MCU stuff, watch some, you know, musicals and things like that. But right now it's just the hits keep coming.
Just kicking us while we're down. Last piece of news before we move on to the review here. Yara Shahidi from Blackish and Grownish. If you're familiar with those shows, I'll say I've watched a handful of episodes, but never consistently. But she is the late teenage, early 20s daughter. She will be playing Tinkerbell in Disney's live action Peter Pan and Wendy. I know we've discussed ad nauseum Disney and live action. I personally do not really care about this movie. I don't know much of Yara's work, but I will say that this is exciting to see some diversity in casting for Disney, especially with a character like Tinkerbell, who is, I mean, you always see like the white, blonde hair, blue eyes, tiny little Tinkerbell. Like, I mean, that's the classic look. So, I mean, they've got in Little Mermaid, they have, who is it? What's her name? Halle Bailey?
Halle, yeah.
That she is playing Ariel. So that's another classic character being changed. So I mean, I'm excited to see all of the changes here. It's encouraging.
Yeah. This is David Lowery's Peter Pan and Wendy. Him being involved is like the only thing that's giving me any sort of hope for this movie. I have never been a fan of like Peter Pan or that story in particular.
Peter Pan is very overrated. It's like the little boy's go-to favorite Disney movie just because it's like pirates, but the movie itself is actually super boring.
I do
Hot
love
take.
the ride at Disney World. I will shout out the ride. But and of course there's the original book, which I'm sure is good as well. But I definitely am not fond of any of the real, you know, cinematic incarnations up to this point. I know Jude Law's playing Captain Hook. That's kind of cool. That could be interesting. But everything else I'm just kind of like wait and see. Like, okay, it'll get here when it gets here, probably. But yeah, good for her though. That's awesome.
All right, that is it for news. Time to dive into the world of Enola Holmes.
Now, where to begin? My mother named me Enola, which backwards spells alone. And yet, we were always together. And it was wonderful. She was my whole world. Which leads me on to the second thing you need to know. A week ago, I awoke. Mother? To find that my mother was missing, and she did not return. I'm presently on the way to collect my brothers, Mycroft and Sherlock. Yes, Sherlock Holmes. The famous detective, my genius brother. He will have all the answers.
Enola.
Where's your hat and your gloves?
Well, I have a hat. Just makes my head itch. And I have no gloves.
My God.
A wild woman brought up a wild child.
Who will make her acceptable for society?
She seems intelligent.
There are two paths you can take, Enola. Yours, or the path others choose for you.
It is time to find my mother. The game is afoot.
This is the latest, like we said, the latest Netflix original film starring Millie Bobby Brown as the titular Enola Holmes. And we've also
the
got
titular role.
Shout out to Lady Bird. We love Beanie Feldstein on this podcast. But also in this movie, Henry Cavill as Sherlock Holmes, Sam Claflin as the other brother, Mycroft Holmes, and Helena Bonham Carter as Eudora Holmes, the mother. So pretty stacked Holmes family when it comes to casting here. Directed by Harry Bradbeer, of Fleabag fame. Johnny, have you watched the show Fleabag?
I have not. That's another movie, or not another movie. That's another series. I have so many series I need to catch up on. But I get I can see similarities from what I have seen of that show in this, and it makes sense. I'm not sure. I know that he has been involved with Fleabag. I just don't know, I guess, the extent. I don't know if he's like the showrunner, like the director, writer. But it's interesting that's kind of it makes it, that connection makes a lot of sense for a number of reasons.
Yeah, that's a great show. That's next on your list after now that you've finished Hill House, I would say. But it's very quick, 6-episode seasons. Absolutely
That's
incredible.
Nice.
But there's very similar stuff. Obviously, that subject matter is far more mature and adult than anything in this show. But just the whole fourth wall break, turning to the camera, directly addressing the audience, kind of like winking at the camera, all of that is just straight up Fleabag, and it works out really well. I loved that here. We'll talk about it more in a bit, but a little more background about Enola. This is based on a young adult mystery series by Nancy Springer, so it's not necessarily, I had never heard of it. I didn't know this. I thought it was sort of an unoriginal thing, but it is not. It's based on a book series. But I mean, just exciting, branching off of the traditional classic Sherlock Holmes mysteries. But before we start breaking down plot, when Enola Holmes, Sherlock's teen sister, discovers her mother is missing, she sets off to find her against her brother's wishes. Enola becomes a super sleuth in her own right as she outwits her famous brother and unravels a dangerous conspiracy around a mysterious young lord. So Rotten Tomatoes currently, this is surprising. Critics score 92%. When you classify that to top critics, 95% certified fresh.
Good grief.
Audience score 68%. I gave this a 76 out of 100. Johnny, what did you give it?
Like, it's pretty split. I'm like 55 out of 100 probably.
So obviously we're both Johnny's significantly lower. I enjoyed it quite a bit, but both very off from the 95% top critic score. But
oh yeah. No.
Let's kind of get into just general thoughts here before we dive too deep. But what was it? I guess I'll let you go first since you were more of a drastic difference. But what were your thoughts here?
I thought it was pretty much like harmless, fine, decent, like entertainment. I thought it was just, it definitely gets points for being more, maybe a little bit more intelligent than like some other, movies that are more aimed at younger audiences. But for me, it was kind of like the big drawback as far as I was concerned, because it just kept pulling me out of the movie, or I kept getting like confused or like off put by it, to me, it didn't really know what audience it was like really going for. Because I wrote on my Letterboxd review, I left a little snippet, but basically it's like there's some stuff in this that is very clearly aimed at like younger children. I think my girlfriend, we watched it together, and we were like 15, 20 minutes into the movie, and things are just kind of like starting out, and it's introducing the characters and all that fun stuff. And it's just very like lighthearted and like young adult, like 12. Like, this is what I think a 12-year-old would probably find like funny or like interesting. And I was just like going from that and then hopping into like a lot of like sexual innuendos and like suggestive like content, like. And I'm not like saying, oh, let me grasp, like, clutch at my pearls. I'm just like offended, or, oh my God, what are the children going to think?
Right.
But for me, it was just kind of like, okay, it's doing this over here, but then, okay, there's this kind of extreme violence in this scene. And then we're going to go back to like a more childish, like portrayal of a certain character or something, a quick like gag. And so it was just a lot of whiplash for me as far as the tone and being all over the place in that respect. It was just kind of, for me, the humor in the story, it was just kind of very YA and even like younger perhaps. And then other stuff, which I thought was funny or like more interesting when it came to the violence or like some of the like sexual jokes that they were making or like implying. was like, okay, that's kind of weird, or like that's kind of interesting, but I'm not really sure how that fits in with the rest of this. And so it was just a little bit all over the place for me. It was not anything I'd recommend necessarily, but I can see why people are enjoying it or would be a fan of this.
I mean, I think what you first said was my biggest takeaway of just like, I thought it was a lot of fun. Like, I mean, I'm not going to say I gave it 3.5 stars, 76 out of 100. So I was like I was high on it, but it wasn't like the best movie I've ever seen, anything like that. And I mean, I again, didn't have that expectation coming in. I hoped for a good time, hoped for some fun. And that's what it delivered. I mean, I thought it was a pretty fun, twisty, slick mystery that wasn't anything too like dense. I thought that it had enough twists to stay interesting and unpredictable, but it wasn't ever anything that was like difficult to follow or got too bogged down in plot or characters or anything. I think you were able to just sit back and enjoy, for the most part, just enjoy like Millie Bobby Brown and her charisma, her charm as Enola, and being just like magnetic, grabbing the camera, whether it was in everything going on or like what she was actually doing as the character, or whether it was her turning to the camera for a fourth wall break. I mean, I thought that the supporting cast was pretty solid for the most part. I hated Sam Claflin, not him as the actor, but his character. Mycroft sucked. But I agree with you. There was some I'm looking at it now. It's PG-13, which, I mean, there were. So
PG-13 is a wide amount of like coverage, though. You know what I mean?
Right. So they're like, spoiler alert, but when dude's head hit the like the metal, I don't know what it was, like
it was metal, like a pine cone like carving.
Yeah, I was gonna say pineapple, but like when he hit that, first of all, homeboy would have died for sure, right on the temple.
Oh yeah, he should have been dead. But secondly, it was just
shocking
gruesome
violence. Like, yeah, I was like, the fact that they had him. The only reason he didn't die is because they couldn't have Millie Bobby Brown kill a man in this movie.
Exactly.
So that was like, again, just like they could have had that happen in like a less intense way. I feel like to maybe make it more justified that he survived. But
yeah,
but also, I wrote down as I was watching. I wrote down that first of all, when she got him in the like explosive factory or whatever, I was like,
right?
I was like, Enola definitely just murdered that man.
That guy should be dead.
And then he pops up later, and then that happened, and I was like, now she definitely murdered that guy.
Yeah, it was just, I don't know. It was all very, and I have no idea what the novel is like, of course, in tone or dialogue or any of the humor and things like that. But yeah, it just felt very kind of confused. Another thing, for example, I didn't really mention yet is the main plot. You get into it and all the advertisements and the trailer and the marketing stuff. It all it leads you to believe that this is about her finding her mom. Like a very kind of, it's not an original concept of, a child needs to find their missing parent or, something like that. But it transforms into this like quasi romance,
murder for hire plot.
Yeah, and like she comes across this young boy who's basically the same age as her, teen, on the train and earlier in the film, and then basically it turned into her trying to solve the mystery around this boy and helping him and saving him, and she gives up. She basically puts the mom situation on the back burner, which is fine. And then later on, it kind of like circles back around to it, like the last second, to the mom thing, and it involves Sherlock and the brothers. But yeah, I don't know. And part of the plot with the boy, who she's trying to save and who's at risk, is it's like very, very political. Like it's very like they're voting on like a reform bill, and like there's a whole scene where like Sherlock Holmes is talking to one of the women who helped Millie Bobby Brown earlier on in the movie, and they're talking about like the political state of the country and who's voting for what, and like how it's very like conservative versus like these people who are trying to reform it. And it's kind of through the lens of like women's rights kind of, and
right. That's what I assumed, that the reform was for like women's
they never
suffrage.
explicitly state, but because of Enola and kind of her mom, the involvement that her mom has in the political movement,
she was going to bomb the if the vote didn't go her way, she was going to bomb like Parliament.
It's like kind of heavily implied that her mom is part of like a terrorist group that was going to like blow up the Parliament building if they like didn't vote for like women's rights, essentially. I don't know. I'm just very, very mixed on this movie. And like, it kind of reminded me of the Star Wars prequels almost, where it's like, okay, this movie is for children and it's supposed to be like action and adventure, but then there's like these scenes where these characters are just talking about like the political like trappings and like conspiracy and like what they're voting for and like counting votes and political parties. I'm just like, why is this the plot? Like, why are we? I get the messaging and I appreciate, you know, what they're going for in that regard, but I just felt like there could have been a much more like simpler and subtler way of doing it and getting that across without like doing this whole subplot with the mom, like a conspiracy, like terrorist like thing, and then the son was going to be sent to war, but no, they needed him because he wasn't going to vote, and then they wanted the uncle to vote, and then the dad was going to vote originally, but then he died, and it was just like, how could they even know these votes were going to happen years in advance, or like what the exact decisions these people are going to make? I'm just like, can we just watch like Millie Bobby Brown like find her mom, like have some like really cool mystery with that, and then maybe she like meets this boy along the way and he helps her something. I don't know. I just thought for something that's aimed at, you know, it is rated PG-13, but, and again, we don't know what the books are like necessarily. Maybe those are much more like YA oriented, maybe like younger, you know, teens, or maybe it is more kind of like older teens that would enjoy those books. But I don't know. It felt like a mishmash of things. And to me, I wish it had gone one way or the other and just committed to that instead of being kind of a little bit of this for this group, like this age bracket, and then a little bit of this for like older kids. I think sometimes in children's movies, I'm sure you'd probably agree, but, you know, you have humor for the adults and like stuff that the adults can enjoy and understand, and then stuff that just the kids are really going to like understand or enjoy maybe. And for this, it was kind of like they were trying to do that, but it was like not the right way, in my opinion. So
I get what you're saying there. I mean, like, I think I agree with you about some of the ways that they went about it, but I guess the purpose of that whole like governmental subplot and stuff was to kind of work in the message here, which I think the message itself was, I really enjoyed it, and I like the whole, like, our future is up to us, like the choice, the free will, like female empowerment, all of those important messages that Enola was seeking out and learning through her mother or through the other people, like resisting the system that just wants her to be the prim and proper woman who only does what she's told. But it did get there were like the instances, like you're saying, how it kind of got a little too bogged down in the specifics versus just like letting the message speak for itself. But I think that they, like, I really enjoyed all of those parts, and I think that they did a nice job of like weaving in like the major things and the little things. Like, one thing that I noticed in particular was like when obviously like the whole "our future is up to us," that can be like massive things, like talking about like her entire life. But then there's also like the scene where she's putting on the corset and she's like, I'm not wearing this because of like the society wanting me to wear it or to show off to look attractive, but I'm wearing it to be knife proof or to store stuff in here. Like that kind of, it doesn't matter how big or how small something is. It's just about her having the ability to choose for herself. And I mean, one of the things you had mentioned it, I think, when you were talking about Sherlock and his visiting, I believe it was like the woman who taught her how to fight. She was the one who said, "You have no interest in changing a world that suits you so well." And I thought that was a great line, because I mean, obviously just relevant in general to like life right now and always life, but like the way that they were able to like weave these kind of heavier topics into a fun adventure young adult movie like this, I thought that blended well. And I was also going to say something that I had noticed, and I was like, as I was writing down some notes, I was like, I may be reading too far into this. But when you had mentioned it earlier, like her making the choice, she was going on the adventure to find her mom, and then she like got sidetracked and made the choice to help Tewksbury. But what a name! What a name!
Yeah, when they were like I was so confused at parts, especially in the beginning, where like I didn't even realize they were saying his name. Like it was like some long kind of like title and like I guess the name of their estate or something. I was just like,
I don't know.
who are
it
we
was
talking
a mouthful
about right now?
It was a mouthful, but when she makes the decision to go and save him, she basically like turns to the camera and was talking about like the need to, she's like, he can't look out for himself. I am able to help him. I am the one, like, so therefore, because I am able to, it is my responsibility to help him. And I thought that was a very like, again, maybe reading into it too much, but I thought that was like a very profound thing about like and she was talking about like her mother wouldn't have done that, or like Sherlock wouldn't have done that,
Right?
But it's like the generational like difference in mindsets between like our younger generation and like older people who are more of like okay, well, that's not my problem, I don't have to worry about that. Like I don't know,
yeah, that's definitely a good point. I agree
taking this like way to the extremes, but like whether it's like healthcare or like just anything about like the classic quote, like, I don't know how to explain to you that you should care about other people, like that kind of thing. But like breaking it down into like a young adult way that people can be like, oh, this makes sense. She's helping him because she's a good person.
No, I think that was definitely one of the better moments, and I liked what they were trying to get across there. I thought that was a pretty good job.
Any thoughts on? Obviously, I talked about Millie Bobby Brown, just like her general charm and appeal. I thought she was able to carry this thing all on her own. I think that the other characters, I mean, I could take or leave the teenage boy. He was as Tewksbury. That was Lewis Partridge. I had never seen him in anything. He was fine, got the job done. Henry Cavill was good as Sherlock. Helena Bonham Carter wasn't in it much. Sam Claflin, hated him. But like she was carrying the whole thing.
Yeah, no, she did a great job.
Which is like we've seen her as 11 in Stranger Things.
Yeah,
she's been in Godzilla. I don't really think she's been in much where she's like, with the exception of Stranger Things, where she's like, at least not in a movie way.
Yeah, no, she carried
to be the star.
She carried the movie, which is great. I mean, it's great that she is kind of getting into.
She's going to be wrapped up with Netflix over the course of having Stranger Things with them, and then I assume they'll probably pivot this into some sort of franchise that she's going to be.
You know, the funny thing is,
for a while.
The funny thing is that Legendary, this is a Legendary production, and before the pandemic, this was going to be a theatrical release through Warner Brothers, and then they optioned it and they had Netflix buy it. So it is going to be interesting. It's weird to think that we could have been seeing this in theaters. Maybe later this year, and this and Dune were kind of their 2020 projects, at least in the second half. So, very weird to think about what if, but I could see Netflix for sure. This does numbers on the service, partnering with Legendary and kind of keeping it going from here. I wouldn't, I would be curious to see what they would do with it, and maybe bringing Henry Cavill as Sherlock, I think is something that people are interested in. Maybe seeing him appear more or work with Enola more. And
I definitely liked their relationship together. Like
I did too,
I thought that they had some tender moments, like kind of where he was explaining about her childhood and about the pine cone, or like just sort of like he was overlooking her just because of her age, but it wasn't anything about like her being female or her being like any different in that sense. But obviously he gained respect for her throughout the movie, so I could see some sort of team up coming, as depending on Henry Cavill's schedule.
Yeah, I think it could be a fun little series that would be fitting for those people, those Henry Cavill and Millie Bobby Brown, who are both pretty big names at this point. Could do well carrying this franchise forward if they wanted to.
Yeah, I agree. I think that hopefully this, like, I like Millie Bobby Brown. I love Stranger Things. Hopefully this will sort of give her a little street cred when it comes to like movies. This will like propel her forward into even more into stardom than she already is as a up and coming like leading actress. Any final thoughts on Enola Holmes before we wrap this up? Again, 76 out of 100 from me, 3.5 stars. I enjoyed it. I would recommend checking it out, especially in this current state that we're in with nothing but Netflix movies.
I could give it like a 60 out of 100. 3 out of 5 stars.
Bumped
basically.
it up, baby. The review convinced him to bump it up.
I just I don't want to be too harsh on it because it is what it is. And I can understand, like I said, why people would be fans of this. I'm personally not big on it. I definitely don't see myself watching it again at any point. But if they do go ahead and do another one, I would be open to, seeing that eventually, especially if they kind of come up with a fun new story. I don't know. I feel like it could have been better for what this cast is and for what this concept is. I think it is a fun spin-off idea, and again, it is based on a novel. We don't really know what the novels are like. It's fine. It's fine. I'm not mad at it.
You're not upset that you spent 2 hours watching it?
Nah, I wasn't mad at that. I guess that's kind of the.
I will say that was one thing.
Bar to clear.
That was one thing. I feel like this could have been great in an hour 45.
I definitely think it could have been shorter, and I definitely think streamlining and improving the plot would have made that possible. So that's what I would say on that.
All right. Well, before we close things out here, in honor of Enola, we are doing our top 5 detective movies. We're ranking them top 5 from 5 to 1. We will take turns alternating. But before we get started, a couple honorable mentions. Johnny, get us started.
All right, got to throw out some of my fave movies here. Zootopia, Detective Judy Hopps.
I forgot about that, but that's an excellent choice.
She's a great little detective rabbit, and I love that movie. One of my favorite animated movies from the last decade. And I think it's a fun little detective story. Hot Fuzz, Edgar Wright, Simon Pegg, Nick Frost. Classic. Just a fun cop movie, buddy cop movie with a genuinely good little murder mystery. And then, of course, The Nice Guys, which is basically a cult film at this point, even though it just came out in 2016. It isn't going to get the sequel it deserves, seemingly. But I love Russell Crowe and Ryan Gosling together, working as kind of these private detectives in is it 70s or 60s LA? And
60s, I believe.
60s. And so honorable mentions, great movies. Go check them out if you haven't seen them.
Definitely some great choices. We may be hearing, 1970s actually. I just looked it up.
Good call.
But great choices. Zootopia could have been an honorable mention for me, but I forgot about it. I haven't seen Hot Fuzz. Nice Guys, might be talking about it in a minute.
You got to watch Hot Fuzz, my man.
I have so many things to watch, Johnny. Is it Blade Runner or is it Hot Fuzz?
Oh, it's Blade Runner in that respect.
All right. Honorable mentions for me. Black Klansman, Spike Lee, John David Washington, Adam Driver. Great movie from a couple years ago. On the more serious side, obviously, with the subject matter, but still incredibly entertaining and a pretty solid mystery and detective work going on there. Switching gears entirely for these next two, the other guys, Will Ferrell, Mark Wahlberg, excellent comedy.
It's so funny.
One of the prime Will Ferrell comedies of all time. I feel like it's underrated, but it's definitely upper tier for him. Just a great detective comedy. And then finally, 22 Jump Street. Hot take, 22 is better than 21. I believe that's a hot take. But I just loved they're both great, but 22 I thought was a little bit better. Loved the college vibe, the spring break adventure. I don't know if they'd really qualify as detectives, but I think that the mystery is enough to get it to pass in my honorable mentions.
I'll give it to you.
All right, get us started with number 5.
Number 5.
And the way this works, we have a couple overlaps here.
We do.
So I think we're just gonna, instead of talking about them multiple times. We'll just if
That's
something
fitting.
from Johnny's list is on mine, then we'll just talk about it at the same time.
Number 5, Denis Villeneuve's Prisoners, 2013. I mean, you want to talk about kind of neo-noir, procedural cop movies where they're, it's a real mystery. This is one of the best. It's coming from Villeneuve, who's one of my favorite directors, if not my favorite. Jake Gyllenhaal plays Detective Loki, and I think it's my favorite Gyllenhaal performance. I really do think it is my favorite. He's excellent, and him and Villeneuve just came up with so many cool ideas to kind of flesh out that character, for more than what it was on the page, and whether it's the little hand tattoos or the masonry ring he wears or the haircut and everything else. Even the blinking he does kind of like incessantly. I just love the mystery in that and how he kind of works. He tries to work with the dad, at least, Hugh Jackman's character, to find his missing daughter. But I just love how that one kind of kept me guessing all the way to the end, even though I do kind of give that movie a little bit of grief. I do think it's an amazing movie, but I do give it a little bit of grief for being, I think, slightly more predictable on rewatch. But at the end of the day, it is one of my favorites, like hands down. So
I would agree with that because this is number 2 on my list. Prisoners, big fan. This is actually one of my like all-time favorite movies. It's up there. So shout out to Denny. But I agree with everything that you said. Super dark, twisty, exciting, very edge of your seat and like pulse pounding. Like there are so many moments in this where it's just like,
oh man,
you really don't know who's making it out alive. And I will say the first time when I saw this in theaters, it was I went to go see it, and at the very end, maybe like as he's
such a good ending.
It's like not like right at the climax. I don't remember like which specific part. The projector went out.
Oh,
and so then they had to like restart it, and then they like jumped a little too far ahead, and then had to like restart it and put it back. And it was just like, still obviously a great experience, great movie, but like that was just like a very memorable movie-going experience for a great movie, but not necessarily the best way.
Yeah. Also, shout out real quick to Roger Deakins. Some of his best cinematography in that movie, some of my favorite for him, and the late great Johan Johansson with the score, which perfectly sets the mood. You always need really good music, I think, in a great detective story. So,
number 5 on my list is Johnny's going to give me a hard time about this, but
oh brother,
number 5 for me is Knives Out. I love Knives Out. I think it's great. Johnny has a personal vendetta against Rian Johnson, but
that's what Zach wants you to believe.
I mean, I think this is one of my favorites. I believe it was in my top 10 of last year, but great ensemble cast, great fun, thrilling whodunit. I know Johnny thinks that this is like telegraphed and predictable, but I loved the
baddest guy in the movie is the bad guy at the end.
No, but I don't think that for me, like what I loved, one of the things I loved about this is that like the whole format of the storytelling of like, okay, we're going to reveal what happened.
I do like that.
At the halfway point. And then, but there's still like half a movie left. There's still an hour left. How are we going to fill the time here? And the way that they kind of subvert the traditional like last minute reveal. That really stuck with me. And I think that Daniel Craig as Benoit Blanc is one of
He's funny
like,
as hell.
All-time great characters. We love Ana de Armas. So, I mean, I think that I can agree with what you're saying about like the fact that Chris Evans, that Ransom was the bad guy. But I mean, I think that there are so many other elements to this, like the cast alone, that makes the like outweighs some of the critiques here. And I mean, I think that this is again just something that similar to Enola, it's just like a ton of fun. Like that. I mean, in the end, I go to the movies to have a good time, and this definitely like did that for me.
Well, speaking of having a good time, someone who absolutely does not give a shit about you having a good time when you watch his movies is David Fincher. And I have 2 of his films on my list. Number 4 is Seven. and that is, of course, the classic 1995 film, Brad Pitt as Detective David Mills and Morgan Freeman as Detective William Somerset. Just rewatched this for the first time in years with a girlfriend. She had never seen it.
I have not seen it either, so don't give anything away, please.
Oh my God!
This is
I'm
very
so glad
high.
you said that.
This is very high on my list. Like
Okay.
like
gotta
literally
watch this soon.
within the last week, I've been like searching
Okay.
because I was like, I was actually looking on Amazon to get the Blu-ray for it because I was
Do
like,
it.
it's about, but it's like very strange I was looking and it was very like limited or something. It was like not on Prime, so it was like through another person. So I was like, maybe I just rent it on like a streaming site. I don't know, but this is gonna be viewed soon for me.
Do it. Good. Yeah, we rented it on Prime. Knocked it out. It holds up. It's so damn good. It's just an ingenious screenplay. It's something that it definitely I hold it over Prisoners in that regard, and that's probably why it's on number 4 above Prisoners. But it's Brad Pitt. This was pretty much when he was kind of breaking out for the first time, and he's playing this kind of cocky, fresh detective, and he's under the wing of Morgan Freeman's character, who is just getting ready for retirement in 1 week. And it's just a gruesome, disturbing, dark, unpleasant experience. I mean, this makes Prisoners look like a damn. It's so hard to compare because I think a lot of people do compare David Fincher and Denis Villeneuve. I think a lot of people compare these two movies in particular. But this is just a great, truly great mystery from beginning to end. It's so methodically planned out, and it pays off so well at the end. It's one of the most unforgettable endings in cinema. It's been parodied. It's been referenced. So for me, it would be impossible to not hold this up there, close to, if not on, the Mount Rushmore of detective movies.
I was listening to The Big Picture last week. They were doing, like, The Ringer did a whole big David Fincher week in preparation for, or it was in honor of The Social Network turning 10. And I believe there was another anniversary that was 25 years. It might even be this.
Yeah, it would be, yeah.
But they were just talking about how Seven is like a timeless, like that some movies like age and they're like a product of their time, but that Seven, even though it was from what, like,
right, yeah, 1995,
like late 90s, like that didn't, like, it still like feels modern when you're watching it. So that's like another thing that makes me excited to watch it.
Yeah, it's definitely timeless. I would say I would totally agree with that.
Number 4 on my list is one that Johnny's already mentioned in his honorable mentions. That is The Nice Guys. If you've ever listened to this podcast, there's like a high percentage that you've heard at some point, whether it's me and Johnny, me and Jake, anybody talk about The Nice Guys. What's left to say about Ryan Gosling and Russell Crowe? Iconic duo, absolutely hysterical. And again, this is another, like, I would say this is like a very unforeseen mystery. Like the way that there are so many different elements at play here. Like even like having rewatched it multiple times, I feel like I still catch new elements of like, this connects to that, or this is why they did that. I actually just rewatched this like a couple weeks ago. For the second, I don't want to say I watched it like maybe a month ago, and then I watched it a couple weeks ago. So it's still just like one of those like instant classics that you can rewatch it and still be entertained. So love The Nice Guys. Great detectives. I would hire them as private investigators.
Nah, love that movie. Wish it had done better, but at least we have the one.
I also saw that in theaters.
I saw it in theaters too. I supported it. I gave it my money. So that one's not on me, folks. My number 3 pick
and
is
my
also
number 3
your number
well.
3 pick, and that is David Fincher's Zodiac. This is probably, I think this is David Fincher's best film. I really do. More than The Social Network, more than Seven, more than Fight Club. It's just a 3-hour epic true story of the Zodiac killer and the people who tried to solve it. People who tried to catch him. And that includes Mark Ruffalo as Inspector Dave Toschi, Jake Gyllenhaal as Robert Graysmith, and Robert Downey Jr. as Paul Avery. Paul Avery being a very famous journalist at the San Francisco Chronicle. Dave Toschi being at the San Francisco Police Department. Robert Graysmith, Jake Gyllenhaal, who this again maybe his best performance, if not best, then probably second best for me. And it's just about obsession. It's about this. It's a murder mystery. It's a true crime story, but the way it's so like the work that went into this movie, I cannot imagine the documentation of all the different events and the people and the dates and the locations and each crime in particular and what happened, and the research. I mean, it's one of the best, I think, edited films ever. I mean, it's so long, but it flies by, and the performances are fantastic. It freaks, and it's so effective and so unsettling because it actually happened. Like, this stuff really happened to real people, and the fact at the end, through all this detecting and all this research and investigation, he never was caught. That's not a spoiler. I mean, it's the most famous unsolved case ever, probably. It's just I love going back to that film. It's definitely one of my favorites. So yeah, that is my number 3 pick.
Another one that I have watched within the last month. Great movie. I could agree with you. I haven't seen all of David Fincher's movies, but I've seen Social Network, seen Gone Girl, seen this, seen all of Mindhunter. So not a movie, but another mystery. But Zodiac is great. It's one of the ones you're talking about, like all the research and stuff that had to go into the movie, but I felt like I was doing that afterwards too, because this is one that after I watched it for the first time, I just dove into Google. Okay, what was real, what was imaginary, like what was fake, what did they change, I read like 15 articles just like trying to figure out. I mean, obviously I'd heard of the Zodiac Killer, I'd known some stuff about him, but not as much as what they go into in the movie. And then I learned even more afterwards. But super, super good movie, great cast. Like you mentioned, Robert Downey Jr., Mark Ruffalo, Jake Gyllenhaal, a little Marvel prequel. But yeah, I mean, and at 3 hours, just about 3 hours, it's still, I would say, insanely like rewatchable. This is one that again, I actually think I watched it for the first time at the beginning of quarantine, and I've watched it again already since then. So this
also
is one
gotta
that
say, this movie has one of the most terrifying scenes.
The basement scene is
Yes.
absolutely terrifying.
There's no
That's
doubt
worse
about
than
it.
anything serial killer related.
There's no doubt about it. Definitely got to shout that out.
I was like, that's another thing. Why was that dude so creepy? Like, if he wasn't it, why was he so creepy?
Hey, it's all about perspective. So I guess that leads right into my number 2 pick.
Well, I think okay, so we'll do together, I guess, because this is.
Oh yeah,
I already did number 2 for myself, which was Prisoners on Johnny's list. So this is my number 1 pick, Johnny's number 2, and that is The Silence of the Lambs.
Oh yes. I mean, what can we say at this point? It's one of I think a lot of people would say it's one of the greatest films ever made. It's one of only 3 films in the history of the Academy Awards to win Best Picture, Best Director, Best Actor, Best Actress, and Best Adapted Screenplay. It's the only Best Picture winner that is a horror film. It's just that damn good. It's perfectly acted. It's perfectly edited. It's perfectly directed. The cinematography is phenomenal. The close-ups in this movie are some of the most haunting, like close-ups you can think of. The way they use the male gaze in this movie, just Jodie Foster is such a great protagonist, and I think that you can really root for Clarice Starling in this movie, especially as someone who's kind of
Clarice.
As someone who's like a young up-and-comer. She's really kind of your jumping in point for this world and this mystery that's kind of unraveling. Anthony Hopkins is Hannibal Lecter. I mean, one of the most iconic, I don't even know if you can call him a villain necessarily, but
right. I watched when I watched this for the first time, it was maybe junior or senior year of college. So it was like I came to this like very late, surprise, but knowing Hannibal Lecter and just like that reputation, I thought he was like going to be the main bad guy, the antagonist.
Yeah.
But he was literally like supporting character, like sidekick. Like,
And it's wild. Yeah.
I had no idea that there was going to be any Buffalo Bill whatsoever.
And that's what I gotta say. Buffalo Bill, Ted Levine, his performance is just as good as Anthony Hopkins and Jodie Foster, in my opinion. I mean, as Buffalo Bill, he is so like intimidating, disturbing, sad, pathetic. He's just a great villain. And at the same time, it's almost like hard to call him a villain, because even though he does all these terrible things, you know,
it's hard to call the man who murders people and keeps them in a bottom of a well and sews their skin together a villain.
But he's like so like he's so mentally.
Johnny, are you on the record defending
he's
Buffalo
so
Bill?
mentally deranged. It's like you like when they eventually kind of have this, you know, climactic showdown. Like, you want nothing more than for him to get like captured or killed or whatever happens to him. But I just love the build up, like how they kind of slowly kind of reveal his character, like throughout the movie. Like, they cut back to him and kind of show his progress in one of his kidnappings and what he's doing in his house. It's just such a good movie. It's very compelling. It's kind of, as you said earlier when you're talking about Prisoners, it's very you know, on the edge of your seat, kind of white knuckle. You know, what the hell is going to happen next? I really can't praise enough. It's definitely one of the greats for a reason.
Yeah, I will say, I mentioned Mindhunter earlier. The reason, obviously I knew of Silence of the Lambs, but I had never seen it. And the reason I ended up coming to it was because of Mindhunter. The real life, or the characters in Silence of the Lambs were kind of like an amalgamation of the real life person that Mindhunter is based on, who developed like the behavioral science unit at the FBI. So I like watched Mindhunter, read the Mindhunter book, and then saw Silence of the Lambs, just because of like the fascination with the whole like serial killer history and like developing these profiles the way that Hannibal Lecter is able to do, and Clarice in turn, about like figuring out what the motivations are, who it is, what the connections are. So
yeah, that's the most exciting part of the movie, I think, is the detective work.
Yeah, and I will say the dual like break-ins at the very end is just incredible.
Hey, if you're in a film class, parallel editing, cross-cutting, whatever you want to call it, like that's the tip top, like prime example. So rest in peace, Jonathan Demme, the director. I think this was like kind of a timeless movie that people will watch this forever. I mean, it's so good. And that is my number 2. That is your number 1.
So what's your number 1?
My number 1, shocker. This film is Blade Runner 2049. It's
surprise.
It's of course a science fiction movie. Everyone knows that. One of the greatest science fiction movies ever made. Zach would have no idea what I'm talking about because he hasn't seen it. But at the core of this movie, it's a detective story. It's a mystery. And just like the original Blade Runner, where Rick Deckard is a Blade Runner, he's a detective. He's on a mission. He's tracking people down. This is much more mystery based. It's much more detective based, more following clues, picking up trails. And that to me was one of the things that gripped me so much when I first saw it, like in the theater, because I went into it as blindly as possible, and I was just really engrossed in the story, which, you know, Officer KD 6-3.7, which is Ryan Gosling's character. He is a Blade Runner. He's a Blade Runner. He's a detective, and he's given this mission. And just the way that he is able to unravel it, and the things that he has revelations about personally and like kind of professionally in this job of his that he's been given. I just love that aspect so much. And that's kind of on top of all the cool stuff that everyone knows about Roger Deakins cinematography and the amazing visual effects and everything else. I think the story is so strong. I think it's so much stronger than the original. that is kind of one of the main reasons it's one of my favorite movies, and one of the reasons I kind of go back to it so much. So that's my number one. You know, what can I
can't say that I'm surprised, but I'm glad that movie brings you so much happiness, and one day hopefully it'll do the same for me.
Oh, one day very soon, my friend. I guarantee it.
Once we get a down week, we'll get the Blade Runner All-Timers episode put together. But that may be this week. I'm not sure, but I think that's it. That's the top 5 for both of us. Any closing thoughts before we sign off here?
Enola Holmes. Not bad. Not good. Not great. But
also make more detective movies. They're great.
Detective movies are great, and I think we deserve more of them. I'm glad Enola Holmes got made. Hopefully we can get more from that universe. And
if anything, our top 5 lists have shown the breadth of this genre.
Exactly.
There's things from Enola Holmes, the young adult detective movies, to the Zodiac, like super intense, terrifying, gory, like horrifying movies, to the Nice Guys, to the Knives Out, to the sci-fis.
Yeah.
Like there's detective movies are great, and they can be any genre.
Now I'm gonna go
even animated bunnies.
I'm gonna go write a damn detective novel or screenplay now. I'm so inspired.
Let's do it. Let's get Jake on call up Jake and we'll make it happen.
I love it. Oh man. All right, great episode. Thank you.
Great discussion. Yeah, thank you everybody for listening. As always, we really appreciate it.
Follow us on all social media platforms. We're on Twitter, Instagram, TikTok. Give us a like on Facebook. Subscribe on YouTube. All at Inside Film Room. And, of course, we also have our personal profiles. I'm very active on Twitter. Give me a follow. Give me a mention. I'll get back to you. We are very thankful for your listening, supporting us as always. It's a great time for us. We are growing and expanding and very, very
closing in on 1,000 on
happy.
Twitter.
Yeah. Hey, 1K. Can you believe it?
Once we get that 1K, there's surprises in store. So I don't know if we need to use the surprises to get to 1K or if we use them to celebrate once we get there. So we'll have to figure that out. But until then, be sure to subscribe, rate, and review wherever you get your podcasts. We're on Apple, we're on Stitcher, we're on Spotify, we're on Google, we're on Amazon, we're on everything. Go and listen. There's no excuses. You can find us wherever you get your podcasts. Subscribe, give us a 5-star rating and review, and be sure to tune in next week when we review who knows what. There's not anything on the schedule, nothing on the schedule, so maybe it will be Blade Runner. Who knows? But be sure to tune in and find out. Talk to you next time.
Peace.